Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show.
Hi, this is Josh Dion, and I'm so happy to be Ben's guest on Big Fat 5.
What is up? Welcome back to Big Fat 5, a podcast financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum. This week's guest is the incomparable Josh Dion of Paris Monster and a million other things. He's a busy New York cat, and I've wanted to get him on for a long time. He's actually a very requested guest, so I'm happy it finally worked out. If you don't know Josh, he's an independent drummer for more than one reason, and yes, there's a dad joke coming. He's played with so many artists, including John Scofield, Pat Martino, Joe Bonamassa, and many others, but in Paris Monster, he plays drums with his left hand, synth with his right hand, and sings lead vocals. Now that's independence. Okay, so we start off by breaking down a bunch of the songs from his career and then hop into the 5 records that shaped him into the extremely unique drummer he is today. This was a lot of fun, and Josh's drumming is superb to say the least. So, cheers.
Spend all this time on something without breaking for lunch, for no other reason than a vision drawn up right. If not perfectly written with care and precision, it won't take off flight. Oh, a vision complete, but nothing in the distance. I've had my share, but never a one that could anyone unlatch. Open and bare to see what I've seen and what it says of me.
So, Josh, I did want to start off by playing a few songs from your career, and you can just tell me where they take you and a little backstory about it. But here's the first one. Okay. Wow. Hell yeah, dude.
I've gotten worse over the years.
Dude, I feel the exact same way, dude.
I mean,
oh my God.
Wow. I'm surprised at how good that is, actually. I remember that band being great. I remember that band being really special to me, especially with like where I was in my life. Like, that was kind of the first time that I went out on the road with a band. It was a quartet. They were already established, and the bass player was a guy named Brian Colleen, who I went to William Patterson with, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, Ulu's looking for a drummer," and I was basically just like, "Yes, like let's do it." And they had all kinds of like kind of improv groove tunes. I was like working on playing in 5 and playing in 7 and working on, just I guess kind of jazz and funk and everything like that. So that's what this band did. So I went out with them, kind of a Herbie Hancock Headhunters-ish setup with the saxophone and the multi-analog keyboards and bass and drums with no vocals really, so it was kind of kind of that funk, that classic funk jazz sound, and so we went out and I was on the road in the van, and I fell in love with owning vans, and I fell in love with 7 and 8 hour drives, and kind of living the life, man. So and that album it sounds good. I mean, it sounds like I remember the time before I started to think about time. And I, almost ruined myself for a few years just thinking about it too much. Whereas I can remember back then I didn't even know what a metronome marking was when I played on that. So I definitely wasn't thinking about that at all, which sounds so cool. So that's inspiring to hear that right now. Maybe I can get back to that.
Hell yeah, dude. So you said, were you like 21, 22? Is it like directly after college?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, so it was just, and I remember it was my first time kind of in the jam band scene, and it was like everybody, there was like a list of bands that everybody was really hot on at the moment. It was kind of a hierarchy of like different bands, of course, Fish, everybody had a Trey Anastasio poster, or Dark Side of the Moon, or I remember everybody listening to a lot of those, and a Go-Go with Scofield and Mineski Martin and Wood had come out, and there was all these bands we used to play with that were amazing. Some of them, Soul Live, and some of these bands had really taken off. Lettuce in those bands. I mean, they were all in that scene. It was really cool, man. Going to festivals for the first time. That's what that reminds me of.
Hell yeah, dude.
That's cool.
All right, number 2. Here we go. Such a different drum sound. So cool. I like that motif you built. Instead of a crash cymbal, you do the hi-hat on the of 4. It's really cool.
Oh. Thanks.
When you're ready to fall, floors and all, before hindsight you will see. I say we are reaching so far high above.
So rad. So that's Walking on Stilts by Josh Dion Band.
Yeah, man.
And that's a two-handed Josh singing, right?
That's a two-handed Josh. And we recorded that album in like one day or something because we had a Highline Ballroom show booked, and we had been recording with someone else, and we were so young and had no clue about how anything worked. And somehow the situation we were in, and it was, I'm sure, partially our fault, or mostly our fault, we weren't going to be able to get this recording done with the producer we were working with. And so we realized that we had to go somewhere else and just do it ourselves, and kind of, so that's basically just us in this room. We didn't know. I mean, I can tell that vocal sound. Holy shit, I would never let that happen now. But
I think it sounds great.
Yeah, no, well, thanks. The drums also, I mean, it's kind of a rough sound. Somehow it works. It's cool. I mean, that song, that just reminds me of like the first songs I ever wrote. I really like the chorus. And I love those people. I actually just saw Dan and Sarah from that band 2 days ago, and we had a beautiful time catching up, man. I mean, yeah, I like that song. Some of the songs we had in that band were really good. And yeah, it's crazy to listen back at yourself, man. You're killing me. Wow.
Good. Yeah, so that's from the album Anthems for the Long Distance, came out in 2008.
Yeah.
People go check it out. And there's multiple albums from Josh Dion Band. But all right, so next one, and then we can hop into a few more questions, and then we'll get into your top 5. So Here we go. Number 3. I love this song, man. This whole album's great.
Thanks, man. Woo.
I believe this tin and flimsy love to be treasured, sleek and solid gold. Tin or treasure, piled or pressed in canyons deep. A love impeded is worth the work to me. I don't give a damn at all. I don't give a damn if all our dreams are steep in decline. My daily trouble clearing rubble and rock is to make a way to you. I don't give
That little turnaround there is really rad.
Thanks.
where dreams evolve.
Woo! Wow.
Canyon air might blow. I'm proceeding as if you believe.
Oh, I love that. Those drums are nice.
Dude, yeah, I agree.
I'm proceeding, braced for the long haul.
This is not to a click either.
Declinations will be met with pig and power. I'm proceeding as if you believe in me. I don't give a damn if all our dreams are steep in decline.
Well, this chorus finish out again.
Okay.
Trouble clearing, rumbling rocks to make a way to you. I don't give a damn that all your work goes filling in mine.
Wow.
A hot canyon air might blow.
I love that you allow yourself to get excited about your own music. I really
Oh,
admire
dude,
that, because
I'm
some people
getting-
just close up and they're like, turn this off. I can't listen to it anymore. I'm embarrassed, or, you know.
I'm getting chills. I forgot how much the song actually means something. Sometimes when we play it, it's like I feel it's a little bit of a pop song, which kind of I hate about myself sometimes. It's like almost too anthemic for where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
But you just playing that just gave me a lot of confidence in it again.
Good.
I mean, you know, and I feel like, I mean, I remember coming up with that first verse bass line and thinking it was just nasty. And obviously the production is so much farther than any of the other stuff you played, so much more developed. And the vocal sound too. I mean, obviously because it's anthemic, we did add a bunch of vocals to this, and I was experimenting, and I still love doing like an octave higher than my voice with like a falsetto and kind of putting it back in the mix. Almost, it basically is just mimicking an effect pedal that I have that I really liked at the time. And you can hear that like I'm developing the left-handed drumming and the synth bass, you know, and that track was recorded actually by Jeff and I, and we brought it to the cats that produced Lamplight, Josh Kaler and Owen Biddle, and we brought them that track, and they brought it into the fold. They actually mixed that after they had worked on all the other stuff and fucked around with the drum sounds and kind of made it sound like the rest of the record. Not having, probably, you know, I don't know how drastic it was, but it definitely was recorded in a different room than the one that we did the other stuff. So they did a great job on that, and it was really, really great, man. I mean, I'm really happy. You hear Jeff's bass, you know, the way that he gets the feedback, and you know, and the low tune drums. You can see that I went for, with the Ulu, it was like more of kind of like I remember the high tune snare was really in back then. Everyone had like even the left hand snare that was like a 10-inch or something.
Yep.
So that drum and bass or whatever the hell it was, you know. And then with my band, it was more like, I guess, just my rock Yamaha kit that I still use, the same kit basically. But then with Paris Monster, you can hear more of the low tuning and the left-handed drumming, which obviously that song is a hook. The drum part, the drum part is, you know, da dum dum ga boom ga da 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 dum dum ga, and so that is the main thing that goes with this, and it all works together, and that's how that was. So man, it's really freaking cool.
Great. I'm happy that's the emotion you got out of it. I'm happy I can influence you that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also in that band right now still. So it's like, you know, it's like...
And so you mentioned it. That was from Lamplight, which came out in 2019. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys had a bunch of plans for that and had to be postponed.
That's true.
But how do you feel, and I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot, but how do you feel the drumming with the left hand has then, when you go back to playing with full hands, all your hands, how do you feel like that has influenced it?
You know what? It actually did a little bit. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's two ways to look at it. In one way, it's all music, so who cares? Because if you're, if it's kind of like if you're, what's the difference? You're just making music. Like I shouldn't be doing anything that I've like preconceived anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yes,
so it's like if I'm just making music, it's like it's up to me to have the wherewithal to do that. But I will say that like I've been touring with John Scofield, just started this year, and so like that has been like, oh shit, like I'm playing drums and I think it's definitely, I come to these places where I'm like, oh man, I don't want to dog myself, but there's definitely times where I'm like, okay, I want to get downstairs in my basement and I want to start practicing more, and kind of developing. It's more about getting down there and just like feeling what I'm feeling and being able to execute it. And that's what my comfort level should be. I should be able to execute things. So we have to keep doing it to do that, we have to like work on it and keep it fresh, and try to get down and feel this. If we can feel the spirit with ourselves, then we'll have a higher chance of doing that when we're with other people. You know what I mean? So it's like, so it's like, I think in the end, the drums are really my instrument, so it's like, more often than not, I have enough to give to any situation anyway, and it's my own mind that gets in the way. But there are definitely times where I go to do something and I'm like, I don't know what I'm trying to do, or I can't do it. And so that's then it's like, okay, well then you practice. You know what I mean? It's just like,
yes. Well, let's just jump into your top 5, and you mentioned Mr. Scofield, and I do want to talk about that, but I kind of want to talk about it when we bring up one of your top 5s. But let's just jump in, and this one, the album's
crazy.
This album's Full Moon, came out in 1972. The artist is Full Moon, and the song is The Heavy Scuffles On. The drummer's Philip Wilson, and this one, I couldn't find it on Spotify, so I have a link on YouTube, and so if you guys want to check it out, I'll put that link in the show notes, but here we go. Here is Full Moon, The Heavy Scuffles On. This is so good, dude. I was jamming out yesterday.
Good.
There's like an overdubbed hi-hat.
Ooh, let me check it out. Oh, I never noticed that. I don't know if I ever noticed the overdubs. You're totally right. There's 2 drum sets.
Yeah.
But there's a percussionist on the album too, so I'm trying to figure out like what the hell's going on now. That's great. That's so great. I mean, I put this on my top 5 because top 5. I mean, who could possibly do a top 5? I actually wrestled with it for like a couple of days.
I know. I'm sorry.
I wanted to try to represent everything that I come from, and it was impossible. But I had to put this album because for numerous reasons. Number one, that not a lot of people know about it, and I listened to it just countless times as a kid, and it's so eclectic. Like this first song is so incredibly funky and dirty, and now that I'm like, my ears are far more developed, I can hear it's not to a click, it's there's like even one of the first notes the bass player plays is like really ahead, and the drum fills are choppy and like beautiful, and I just love the way that they play together. And it turns out that a lot of these guys are from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and they had come together to make this record Full Moon that was kind of really well known around musicians. And now there's a club in the town that I'm from in Eastern Connecticut called the Shaboo. And Full Moon came to the Shaboo, and like musicians from the area talk about that being like this huge show. Like, Full Moon came there and played. Numerous Shaboo had huge, artists come through. It's really a beautiful history that we have in my area. Well, no, I was 2 years old when the place burned down, so I never got to remember it. But Full Moon played there. And Full Moon is kind of a fusion band in a way. And Buzz Featon's playing guitar, and it's got that beautiful tone of his. And then, his second solo was a wah-wah solo, which, of course, is 1972. And just the way those guys play together, I don't know. I just had to put it on because it was probably the first time I heard an album that had funk, had a ballad, had like kind of Latin jazz influences, had like gospel where they sing too. I mean, this band had everything, and everyone always said they were ahead of their time. Who knows? But that's Full Moon. Now, Philip Wilson ended up doing a bunch of avant-garde stuff later in his career, and I just thought that the fact that these guys were so well-rounded, they really played everything, and that's why I wanted to represent that in this album, in this podcast, because I just thought Full Moon, what a cool, if you talk to a lot of older cats, they'll be like, Full Moon.
Just hands down, Full Moon.
They know about it. Yeah.
Awesome name for a band, too, Full Moon.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
it's great. I still have the old record. I love it, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, they look like 5 cool cats on that cover. If it's the blue one that I'm looking at, it just says Full Moon above it.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're just 5 cool people, just put them on the cover. All right, so number 2, the album is Open Your Eyes, and the release year is 1972, so 2 years after Full Moon. And this is Earth, Wind, and Fire. The drummer is Morris White, Ralph Johnson, and Fred White, and the song is Mighty Mighty. So, yeah, do you want to talk about it before we play it, or just talk about it afterwards?
There's so many drummers in Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm not entirely sure who this is. I think it might actually be Ralph Johnson, but I actually kind of don't know what I'm talking about because Maurice laid down tracks, especially in the beginning. It was usually him. Yeah. And he, and it's kind of hard to know, But I picked this album. Now, I'm a huge Earth, Wind, and Fire fan. I own, I think, pretty much all their records. And I picked this one because, once again, it's the most eclectic. It's before they had, like, international explosion success. And there's all kinds of stuff on it. There's a gospel, there's a samba, there's odd time stuff, there's a jazz song, there's funk, obviously, and the Earth, Wind, and Fire stuff, there's kalimba-driven music. I mean, and this is a song that did well on the radio and people knew about. It's called Mighty Mighty, and it's a funk, one of the first funk songs I got into. It kind of like helped open the door for that.
Hell yeah, here you go, Mighty Mighty.
Okay. The bass playing is ridiculous. Oh.
That low note when he hits it is just
Yeah.
So cool.
Oh.
And he holds it a little bit longer than you think he would.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah, you mentioned Lettuce earlier. Adam has been on the show, and I forget the song he chose, but he's like, yeah, if I'm ever in a weird funk or a bad mood, I put on Earth, Wind & Fire. Within 30 seconds, I'm back.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so true. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Like, Earth, Wind & Fire for me, you see, okay, so when I was about 12 until I was about 16 or 17, I was a Pentecostal Christian. I had a born-again experience and, like, was really into gospel music, and that was where I started singing and playing piano and stuff and trying to do it, you know, because I was a drummer. I was a drummer my whole life. But then I had gotten into that stuff, and you see, when I finally was like, what am I going to do with my life, and I finally decided to move to New York to play jazz, but socially, like, I think that I had been in this thing for a long time, you know, which had so many great things. Like, it kind of instilled this thing in me that I still have, you know. It's like it comes out in the music and life and stuff. It's beautiful. Faith or whatever you want to call it, you know.
Yeah.
But Earth, Wind & Fire was really the band that kind of helped me get into secular music again, I guess, you know. And it was like they had this spiritual message, but the music was amazing, and like they, you know, I don't know. It just, there was something about them that kind of like changed me, and it brought me into the fold with the funk. And I started to get really into funk, and I started to kind of come out of this thing. I was a little secluded, you know, and I started to get into it with them. And so I'll always cherish them for that, you know, the fact that their music kind of brought me into, and while keeping that same spiritual thing, like, oh, you can be spiritual and still go out and make a living as a musician, you know, and you can, like, you know, treat people with respect and, like, try to, like, you know what I mean? It was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like this, they have such a positive message, and they're all badasses, and they're all drummers. So
oh, really?
Like, you know, Maurice White and Fred White are drummers. Ralph Johnson is a drummer. Philip Bailey's a drummer. They all play percussion. You know, and then like you said, Verdine, who's their other brother, he's playing bass, and the way he plays is abnormal. Like, coming up with that part, just so nasty. I mean, it's like, yeah. And also, I'd like to point out, I love that the soprano sax, they had a soprano saxophone, a guy who probably played tenor too, but I think a lot of times it was soprano, and the way that Larry Dunn doubled the part with the synth.
Oh,
that saxophone and kind of like the horn section, it wasn't the full horn section. They hadn't gotten... I can't remember if Charles Stepney was producing their stuff back then or not. I don't think so. So I think once they got to the full horn section and they got all produced and they started having those mega hits, this was before that. So it's still a little raw, you know. So I really dig that. And I also remember, like, thinking, how the hell are they singing like that? Because my voice hadn't been woken up really yet, and I really had no clue how to. I still don't have that kind of voice, but just to, like, the magnitude of how great they are, and the fact that they did that live. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. You know, it's insane, while dancing and shit.
Yeah.
It's really just inspiring.
So before you got into funk, like, what about funk was just like, holy shit, this is it?
Yeah, I think. Well, you see, I had been into blues, and I've been into, like, Led Zeppelin, so I think I knew what a groove was still. But something about funk, the attitude, and I don't know. There's, like, something, like, I was like a nerdy white kid from suburbia who, like, heard Parliament. It was just like, wow, like, this is completely different than the life I grew up in. You know, even though I was raised with music, so I mean, I knew who Muddy Waters was, you know, but I hadn't been to the next level. I hadn't, like, chronologically gotten. I had knew Jimi Hendrix, you know. I might have even known Band of Gypsies, but probably didn't get it yet, you know. Backbeat, like, what's a backbeat? Oh, okay. Oh, that's what John Bonham does. Oh, good, he's got it from them. Oh, okay. You know, now I'm going back and I'm realizing, like, and so it's like, yeah, and I Earth, Wind & Fire, like I said, they're so colorful. It's almost like it's punk, but it's pop music still, you know. But then there's all these different kinds of funk. Now, I knew Tower of Power, but I didn't know the Gap Band. And so the Gap Band, kind of the more on the one type stuff, then I really started to get into that. You know, and I started to, you know, really, like, I bought every record. I started to acquire funk music in any way I could, I started to realize that there was funk from different parts of our country. Like the Meters and Dayton, Ohio, with the Ohio Players and Roger and Zapp at Lakeside, San Francisco, Tower of Power and Sly and the Family Stone, and Tulsa was the Gap Band, and then you get into the different Memphis with Al Green and the way that sound was, and all these different places that people lived and brought funk, New York, or obviously everywhere. The Philly sound. I mean, there's so many. Detroit, obviously. So it's like all those different things. You start to hear the difference between those things, and you're like, wow, this is never ending. And then you've got funk fusion, guys who like jazz cats who started making funk albums. Donald Byrd and George Duke was the funkiest cat ever. The Isley Brothers, they went from being a hit group, started as a singing group and then moved into like the 60s and did all kinds of different albums, almost more acoustic. Then they became like this funk. It's almost like they took what Funkadelic did and they turned it into what they did or something.
I had no idea. Yeah, because I always associate them with that. The first thing you said, yeah.
Oh my God. See, I didn't put them on there, but it's almost sacrilege because their material from 1973 to 1983 is just nasty.
Hell
it's
yeah.
So the funk, you just hold it. It has arrived. You see, it doesn't like, it's not like, I mean, you can have a verse and a chorus, I guess, and you can build like Mighty Mighty to has a chorus and stuff. But in many ways, the funk is something that has arrived already. You just hold it. It's a feeling that you're keeping. You know what I'm saying? And it's a party, and it's also like you're bad. You got to feel that you're bad, and you got to feel that you can hold this and make it dance and you feel it so deep inside that you're like, oh my God, it's like it's imploding inside of me, and I don't want to move. I don't want to play a fill with a crash cymbal because it feels so freaking good right now. So I'm just gonna hold whatever I got. I can't move.
I was gonna say I can tell what you just said about not doing the crash cymbal in the like with the second song I played, which is Walking on Stilts with You. I mean, like, you're just holding that groove. You're admitting there's a little bit of a transition, but you're just doing that hi-hat on the of 4.
Yeah.
So I can see all those flowing through you just naturally. So I got to say that was probably one of the best answers of why is funk good. That's
good.
So thank you.
Well, I mean, let me tell you, I'm a little obsessed with it still. I mean, people, if you talk to people that I went to high school with, they'd be like, yeah, he had a problem.
Oh, the funk guy? Yeah. I remember
the
him.
Funk guy.
Yeah,
the funk guy. Yeah, I'm still finding out about bands. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a never ending, man.
Yeah. Well, especially with technology, so many bands from that era that kind of were swept under the rug during the time are now being able to be found.
No, it's like the Full Moons of the world. There's like all these funk bands that were from different places that I like didn't know they existed.
Yeah. Well, let's go to number 3, and so this is the chance to talk about Scofield a little bit. So the album's Loud Jazz, came out in '88, and it's Dennis Chambers on drums, and the song is Dirty Rice. And you said you wanted to play at about minute 20. So let's, and I did do that already, and it is a good spot to be.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Ooh, that tom sounded great.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like kind of an outro here. Yeah. Wow.
It's never not interesting, you know?
I mean, once again, Scofield's writing is so gospel influenced. It's incredible.
Wow.
Like they're moving around with the dominant chords, and Scofield has got this very major thing he's playing there. It's like beautiful and simple. And then Gary Granger on the bass, I'm noticing now that he's like kind of doing this chromatic do 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 do, and it's making it, I don't know, it's not sweet or anything. It's still badass, even though he's major, you know. And I just noticed that Dennis is doing like the broken. See, that's also funk. Is like the notes you don't play. So it's like 1, 2, 3, ga ga ooh ooh ga ooh do do ga ga boo. You know, like all that. Like there's so much space and there's so much anticipation. So that's such a beautiful way of describing funk. Also, is like when you take a solo in that kind of feel. And I chose that part because this is like a super band for me. Because George Duke is taking the keyboard solos, and he's my number one idol for keyboards, or one of my heroes in terms of that. There's so many great keyboard players. I just really always loved George for his singing and his he's just so, I don't know, he can do anything, but I also just like how simple he played sometimes, almost like a blues player or something. Like even though he played with Zappa and he played with everybody, I don't know. I feel like it's accessible to me where I am harmonically right now. I'm starting to understand, like, and I feel it right here with George. And I loved Scofield. And the thing that's interesting about Dennis and Gary is that, it was a band. Scofield, got those guys in the band, and Dennis was coming from P-Funk, and Gary's coming from a band called Pockets. And they're both from the Baltimore area. And Dennis was my introduction to funk in many ways, along with Earth, Wind & Fire, because of a VHS tape my dad had gotten me called Dennis Chambers in the Pocket.
Yep.
That came out on DCI. I was like 15. I remember I let it sit on the shelf for a while, and then one day I put it on, and it had Sissy Strut, it had One Nation Under Groove, it had Scofield, it had Chameleon, and it had grooves that were on the one, like Flashlight, but then they would break it up and do the broken stuff, which was like super fancy and kind of coming out of more like the Garibaldi meets, stuff like that, like In Time, Sly Stone, like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And Dennis had his own unique way of doing that, obviously. So, and that was part of the fire that set me off, and I went crazy on funk. And I was a Dennis Chambers fanatic. And then so I got the Scofield records with Dennis Chambers, and I think that the fact that these songs were, harmonically thick, interesting songs, melodically driven songs, beautiful, but with Dennis and Gary doing that thing that they did with the slap bass and the drums, and and George Duke, it was just, that's why that's one of my favorite albums. I still listen to it. I still put on the vinyl, man. It's just, I love the ballads on that record. It's one of my favorites, man. And I've gotten to meet everybody except for George because he passed away. But I've gotten to meet and hang with everybody who was a part of that record at this point. I haven't gotten to meet Steve Swallow, but he produced it. And Scofield told me that they actually flew out to L.A., him and Swallow, to do the George Duke keyboard solo. So I'm picturing them coming in, and being like, here's the track, and having him, because it sounds to me like a first take or a second take, or at least like just one take. He just kind of felt it. It just blows some amazing shit over this, So it's really cool. I really love that record, man. God, it's freaking crazy.
Well, and now I want to talk about Yankee Go Home Band, because now you're playing with Scofield. So how'd that come about?
There's a great drummer by the name of Tony Leone who is now playing with Little Feat, and he was playing with Scofield, and he got the gig with Little Feat, and so they needed a drummer. And a bunch of people recommended me because he wanted to do something that was kind of older rock songs, or folk rock, for lack of a better word. I think it's more stuff that reminds Scofield, when he was first coming up, because he wrote a bunch of songs too that kind of remind him of something, that from the late 60s or 60s. And So the gig is like you're playing rock or funk sometimes, but then you're also opening it up, and you're totally conversing and improvising, and everything can happen. Like it could go anywhere. We go free sometimes, which is like some of my favorite moments to play that way with him. So it's kind of a conglomeration of all the styles that I've ever heard Scofield play. Like, and so in my mind, it's such a joy because I'm getting to play kind of like any way that I ever heard on his records. You know, you're thinking of, there's Dennis, there's Joey Barron, there's Steve Jordan, there's Bill Stewart, there's Billy Hart, there's Idris Muhammad, there's
Adam
Deitzen, that whole band. I mean,
Yeah.
like that was a whole, yeah, right, totally.
When I think of Scofield, I think of him giving people, like, I hired you because I trust you, do you.
Exactly.
It's such a good gig, yeah.
It's really cool. I feel like whatever I developed the past few years with the Jim Cambalongo trio and with Wayne Krantz, and we just kind of becoming like, because I had moved to New York originally to play jazz, which not just jazz, but improvised music, and to find a sound and to have a voice, you know. And it's not like I didn't have that, but the singing really kind of gave me my voice, you know. But then I got into Levon, and you're like, well, listen, you're here, you know it's Levon when he plays, so it doesn't mean you can't, you have to still, you know, you have to love the drums, you have to give to the drums. And I think with Scofield, it's kind of like Paul Motion and all the free guys I've been checking out, Beaver Harris and, you know, Adam Nussbaum, the shit he did with Adam Nussbaum like a really long time ago. Those guys have been friends and colleagues for a really long time. So all these bands he had, I feel like Al Foster, like, I'm just, all that shit is running through me, and I can't help but be influenced by it when I play with him. So, and of course he said to me, we want Josh. So it was just like, okay, well then I almost just need to shut my brain off.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's been really great, and, you know, and once again, back to the practicing, it makes me want to practice. You know, because I feel like there's a place I go with him in the band when I'm not thinking and I'm running on instinct, where shit happens and the music goes somewhere and people are smiling. And there are times when I don't feel so great and the music isn't bad necessarily, but you can tell it may not peak as much, or there may not be enough authority in the ideas I'm giving, or I'll listen back, and you know what I mean? So I'm still learning, you know, night to night. On how to play together, and it's so beautiful because the music's improvised. These guys treat it like there are no mistakes. You almost don't want to say like, hey man, like I missed that thing, like, you know, or whatever. Like it's like, well, what did you miss, really? You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll come in and I won't know where one is, you know, and I'll jump off the cliff in that department, or sometimes we'll lose tempo and we'll just go free. And I'll start having, you know, think texturally, and like there's a lot of that too. I mean, I'm so into that at this point. And anyway, I love John Scofield and I love his band, and it's a dream. It really is, you know. And I'm still getting it together, man. It's just constant.
I mean, the videos I've seen, you seem like you're just so in the zone. So I can see you're having a great time. And what is
Thanks,
a
man.
one? You know what I mean? What is the
What
one?
is one?
It doesn't, even if he thinks of something and you come in, maybe the thought he had didn't know it was on your one. You know, who knows?
Well, and it's so crazy with drums, because I feel like I do have an instinct of when someone turns it around, I feel like, boom, a light bulb will go off. And I'll be like, we're in a different place right now. I'll just know. And that's the instinct that you make music with. You know, it goes beyond, like you said, what's one? You know, so I can hear their phrasing. And when I can't, but there are plenty of times when I'll be playing with them and I'll be like, I don't know. It's just, I'm looking for something to happen for me. I'll reset myself like 5 times during one song. You know,
Yeah.
It's like we're in the middle of some crazy section.
No, those are the best. I mean, I don't play with people that improv as much as that, but it is so fun when everyone clicks on stage and you start laughing because you're like, what the hell was that? But that was so sick. I hope someone recorded that on side stage, because whatever happened was magical. But all right, for the sake of time, let's go on to number 4. And the album is It's number 4. The album is Testimony. The release year is 1992. The artist is Richard Smallwood Singers, and the song is Wonderful Counselor. And the drummer is Bill Maxwell. So this is also one I couldn't find on Spotify, so this is going to be a link that I'll put in the show notes. So clean sounding.
Right? 92.
Yeah, the older I get, bass is the best instrument. Forget drums, dude. Bass is the best.
I don't disagree. I still have to check out harmonically what that is. It's so cool. Yeah, Richard Smallwood. I mean, I put that on there because of what it represents. I mean, that's kind of an amazing, it's an amazing album. I mean, I wanted to represent the Christian part of my development because I listened to so much Christian music in my teen years where other people were listening to Nirvana and shit. I was listening to the Richard Smallwood singers and Phil Driscoll and like some other stuff that's even like way cheesier. Like this is like the good shit, you know? But Bill Maxwell was in a band called Koinonia, which was kind of a fusion band that had Alex Acuna on percussion and Abel Boreal. And some badass, yeah. So and it was Christian. So I think once again I needed that gateway, and I because my dad would listen to it and stuff. My dad is born again, you know, and so we would listen to Koinonia, and I remember being like, this is nasty stuff, you know, not even realizing like Alex Acuna is like on Heavy Weather, you know what I mean? It's just like kind of crazy. Bill Maxwell was a Meat and Potatoes drummer who I found out later was a producer, which I thought was really interesting. That a lot of drummer producers, they play for the song so well, you know, and he produced tons of Christian music. And when I saw that, I'm like 90% sure he's the drummer on this. Like for some reason I always forget, because like you said, there's no, I don't think I have a hard copy of this anymore. If I do, it's like on a burned CD. But Bill Maxwell, he produced tons of this, and it's like it was a smaller scene than I thought, and I just thought it was so interesting that he was involved with this. When I found out, I was just like, wow, here's this guy again. And I remember I used to hear him solo on Koinonia, and his solos were it reminded me of the way my dad played, kind of like simple, rudimental, not like flashy, not like Dennis or someone like that, groove oriented. And I didn't get it yet as a kid. I didn't get it that was the shit. You know, and now I hear that and I'm like, okay, you know, that's amazing. And the way he plays on these tracks, and then I found out how much stuff he had produced. So, not to mention the harmonic shit that Richard Smallwood is pulling off is really great on the record. And yeah, it's incredible. I mean, gospel music is just another genre that's just like limitless. There's just so much, and it goes back so far. So it's and the gospel drumming is kind of such a tight groove. It's so perfected. It's beautiful. There's not like a lot of room for mess. You know what I mean? And everyone is so on and wonderful at what they do, and the tempos are incredible, and everything is tipping. The funk is like kind of on the top end of things. It's really killing, man, killing.
All right, last one, going to the great Mr. Gene Krupa. And this is a track that came out in 87, or this is a compilation that came out in 87. Do you know when? Yeah.
I don't know. This is what I had on cassette tape.
Yes.
You know, and I know every note on it pretty much. You know, as a kid, just listening over and over. And I'm pretty sure this is some stuff he did with Jerry Mulligan as the arranger.
Okay. So yeah, it's the song is Disc Jockey Jump, and we're gonna go to minute 122. Da boom, da boom, da. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And then just right back in and just easy grooving. Yeah, actually, one of my first visual memories of a drummer is this video compilation my dad had of a Gene Krupa scene from. I'm assuming it's from a movie, but he was in this like downstairs where all the pipes were bursting, and he was just playing on like all the pipes, and they were steaming, and it was all, you know, obviously staged, but it was. He didn't play the drum set till like minute 2. He was just playing pipes the whole time.
Oh, I gotta find that.
I'll send you a link. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
I love how he just plays the hi-hat.
I mean, that's how it's done. That's how it's done.
It's so good. I mean, it's obviously like a newer recording than most of the stuff with Benny Goodman or like any of the stuff that he did early on. But yeah, I just chose that just because, I mean, I could have chosen so many things for Gene Krupa, but I had to put Gene Krupa on because when I was a kid, that was my first love, you know, as a drummer, and it led me to jazz. My dad had a movie called The Gene Krupa Story, which was Sal Mineo. And I learned basically every move from that movie by watching someone else be him. But they did such a good job, and the soundtrack was obviously Gene Krupa, that it just led me to this whole thing of checking out early jazz. And I started, my dad used to work at the high school that I would end up going to, but I was about 8 years old, I think. And I used to go summertime, there were no students, so I would go to work with him. And I'd go to the library, and they had Encyclopedia of Jazz by Leonard Feather, and they had all these old records, and I used to do studies. I would just like put on Gene Krupa, and then it would lead me to like, oh, who's Chick Webb, who's Papa Joe Jones, obviously Buddy Rich, who's Big Sid Catlett, who's Baby Dodds. I mean, I started to really get into jazz drumming. Sooty Singleton with Fats Waller. I have this cassette tape of Fats Waller compilation that, like, you know, I just wore it out. Like, that was how I learned how to play jazz, was early jazz. And Gene Krupa, you know, he did that, and he had, like, this way of playing, like, it was a lot of singles and a lot of feel, and it wasn't so, it wasn't as, you know, complicated or as mean as like a Buddy Rich, where you're just like, okay, obviously he's got some shit that no one else can do, you know. I mean, it was just incredible. Gene didn't have that. He had like this vibe. He had a vibe, and people loved him, and that's why he, you know, he got involved in movies and shit like that. I mean, he was like a star, you know. He was a front man. And so, but swung his ass off, and the way he plays on that track, I just love, like that kind of thing he would always do, and he'd get to that part like in the middle of his solo, you know what I mean? He would always get to that thing where he'd like start building up the singles. I mean, I think most of the old school drummers did that, you know, had a thing where they'd get to the middle of their drum solo and they'd like do singles. And
it's because singles are the best, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, and Gene obviously played rudiments. He's coming from that same thing that all those cats are checking each other out and stuff. It's coming from the snare drum. Mm-hmm. So, that's what that was. But yeah, he was as simple of a player as he sounds like sometimes, if you were to like, transcribe it or whatever. I remember my dad would really like encourage me, and I used to do sing, 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 and I would do all that stuff as a kid. So I really love Gene Krupa, and no matter what I do, my jazz feel kind of comes from early jazz. I can't really help it. Like all those cats. Papa Joe had that same thing. He was a total showman. Mm-hmm. It was a show. You could just watch him play drums, and that's enough. That's a show in itself.
Yeah, Papa Joe was on one of those clips in that video that my dad had. I forget which one it was, but I remember. Yeah, I remember just the name Papa Joe. I was like, oh, that guy sounds cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Papa
Josh,
Joe
that's enough. That's the time we have, and we talked about you playing with the Scofield and stuff. Are you still playing with them? Is there things that people can check out, or what's the future of that? Are you releasing any albums you want people to know about? Just floor is yours.
Yeah, well, Paris Monster is working on a new album, and we're really getting somewhere with that, and we're still playing shows. The Scofield band is playing, certain times this year. We're going to be in Europe in July.
Awesome.
But then Paris Monster is also doing some shows and kind of getting a game plan for maybe next year to kind of get back out there and stuff. So it's kind of both at the time. And, I've got a studio now. I've been just working on music and all kinds of different projects myself. And aside from that, I do some local stuff in New York and, with some great players. I've just met so many great people over the years. So I try to do as much as I can while, keeping my own thing going. And obviously the Scofield thing was just such a kind of like out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Kind of changed my life for a little bit. But it's, it really seemed like a good thing for me to do at the time, just, for many reasons. So it's just, so I'm going to keep doing that. And yeah, I'm easy to find. I mean, I'm online way more than I should be. And
yeah,
but usually I post what I'm doing for the most part.
Dude, great to meet you, man. And if
great to meet you.
If I don't see you in a few weeks, hope to see you soon, man. So
okay, that'd be great.
All right, man. Okay. See you, dude.
Okay, good night.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using Isotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at isotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!